Some people walk into a room and nothing shifts. Others enter and everything does, without a word spoken, without a single announcement, without trying. There's something about you that makes people stop mid-sentence. Not because you're loud, not because you're demanding, but because something about the way you carry yourself pulls at something deeper than curiosity. It's that look, the one where someone's eyes linger just a second too long, where conversations quietly tilt in your direction, where the energy shifts the moment you enter. You're not imagining it. You carry a different mark, and that mark doesn't go unnoticed. The truth is, most people move through life without ever being truly seen. They blend, they adapt, they shrink to fit the spaces they occupy. But then there's you, someone who didn't play by the rules everyone else memorized. You didn't follow the script, didn't accept the limits set for you, didn't settle for the version of yourself that was convenient for others. And the moment that shift happened, the moment you stopped being invisible and started being noticed, everything changed. People started watching, not because you asked them to, not because you performed for them, but because something inside you refused to stay hidden any longer. There's a moment in every chosen one's journey where you realize the attention isn't accidental anymore. It's not admiration. It's not even respect in the traditional sense. It's something deeper, a frequency others can sense but can't quite name. You're a walking anomaly in a world that rewards sameness, and that anomaly makes people pay attention whether they want to or not. Number 1. You carry a frequency most people have forgotten. There are certain energies in this world that most people can sense but never learn to understand. A presence that feels different, not louder, not brighter, but somehow more aligned. You don't try to be different, you simply are. And that very fact creates a ripple effect that most people can't ignore. It's like walking into a room where the air itself changes. People feel it before they even know what it is. Their bodies shift, their conversations pause, their attention redirects without them choosing to. You are that shift. Not because you announced yourself, not because you worked for it, but because the energy you carry operates on a different wavelength, one that most people have abandoned or never learned to access in the first place. Most humans move through life operating on borrowed frequencies. They adopt the energy of their surroundings, mirror the people around them, shrink their presence to avoid standing out. It's a survival mechanism. Blend in, don't attract attention, don't make waves. But the moment you stopped borrowing someone else's frequency and started operating on your own, you became something that the human nervous system reads as significant. Not a threat, not a reward, just something that doesn't fit the pattern. And the human brain is hardwired to pay attention to anything that breaks pattern. It doesn't matter if you're loud or quiet, confident or uncertain. The fact that you're different is enough. Your frequency alone is a message that most people can feel, but few can articulate. This is why people watch you, not because they're curious about what you do, they're curious about what you are. They sense a depth that doesn't match the surface. A groundedness that most people lost somewhere along the way. A stillness that feels like authority without demanding anything. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to prove it. You simply exist in that frequency, and it creates a gravitational pull that most people can't resist. The world has taught them to ignore their own inner signals, but your presence reminds them what it feels like to be near something real. And that reminder is uncomfortable. Not because it's bad, but because it exposes everything they've numbed in themselves. You don't operate from noise, you operate from alignment. And that alignment radiates louder than any shout could ever reach. Most people can't name it, but every single one of them feels it. That's the mark you carry, a frequency so grounded in truth that it shakes the foundations of everyone who comes close to it. Number 2, the mark you carry makes people feel seen, and that terrifies them. There's something about being in the presence of someone who doesn't need validation that forces everyone else to examine their own hunger for it. You don't seek approval. You don't perform for recognition. You don't adjust yourself to make others comfortable, and that single fact makes people deeply uncomfortable. Not because they dislike you, but because your very existence is a mirror they didn't ask to look into. They see themselves through you without you ever saying a word. And what they see isn't always flattering. Most people spend their entire lives seeking external confirmation. They need to be told they're doing okay. They need to be seen, acknowledged, validated by someone, somewhere, at all times. It's exhausting. It's invisible. And it's the default state of most humans walking around this planet. But you broke that pattern. You stopped needing the outside world to tell you who you are. You found that inside. And that shift made you dangerous to everyone who's still dependent on outside sources for their sense of worth. When someone like you walks into a room, people feel it. Not because you announced your independence, but because your energy radiates it. You don't adjust your posture based on who's watching. You don't change your story based on who you're talking to. You don't seek approval before speaking your mind. That kind of anchored presence makes everyone else aware of how unanchored they actually are. And that awareness hurts, not because they're bad people, but because they've been living in dependency for so long that they forgot what freedom felt like. The mirror effect is powerful. People can't help but see their own reflection in you, the approval they constantly chase, the validation they can't live without, the small compromises they make every day just to feel accepted. Your presence forces them to confront that, not through words or confrontation, but through the sheer contrast of how you show up in the world. You don't have to call them out. You don't have to shame them. You simply exist as proof that another way is possible, and that proof alone is enough to make them feel everything they've been avoiding. This is why they watch you so closely. It's not admiration. It's recognition, the kind that stings because it shows them exactly where they're still hiding. Your mark isn't just different. It's disruptive in the quietest way possible. It exposes the difference between living on borrowed energy and living on your own. And that exposure is something most people are not ready to face. Number 3. You survived something that left a mark on your soul, and people can feel it. There's a particular kind of depth that only comes from walking through fire and refusing to burn. You've been through things that would have broken most people. You've faced moments that demanded everything you had and gave nothing back in return. You lost things, you grieved things, you carried weights that no one saw and no one acknowledged. And somehow, against every odds stacked against you, you kept walking. That survival didn't just pass through you, though it changed the very structure of who you are. People can sense that, not with their eyes but with something deeper. There's a gravity to someone who's been broken and rebuilt themselves, a quiet authority that comes from looking into the abyss and refusing to let it win. You don't talk about what you've been through, you don't wear your scars as decoration, but the depth that came from those scars is visible to anyone paying attention. It's in the way you handle pressure, the way you respond to chaos, the way you stay grounded when everything around you is falling apart. That steadiness isn't fake, it's forged. Most people have never been tested the way you've been tested. They've lived comfortable lives, avoided hard choices, stayed in safe zones where nothing could really hurt them. And that's okay, until they meet someone like you, someone who has no fear of the dark because they've already walked through it, someone who doesn't panic when things go wrong because they've already survived worse. That contrast is unsettling, not because you're scary, but because you're proof that humans can come out the other side stronger than they went in. When people watch you, they're not just watching your current success, they're watching your survival. They're trying to understand how you did it, how you went through what should have destroyed you, and came out the other side still standing, still clear, still moving. They want to dissect it, understand it, find the secret. But the secret isn't complicated. You just refused to break. You held on to who you are when everything else was being taken away. And that refusal created a kind of power that most people have never accessed. Your mark is forged in fire. And everyone who comes close to you can feel the heat. Number 4. You don't belong to the narrative people wrote for you, and that makes them obsessive. There are people in this world who live inside boxes they never chose. Family expectations, social circles, cultural scripts. The path everyone told them to walk. Most people accept those boxes. They may complain about them, dream about breaking out, tell themselves someday they'll be free, but they never do. They stay inside the narrative someone else wrote for them because it's safer than the unknown. But you walked out of that box. You rejected the script. You refused to play the role they cast you in. And that single act of defiance, even if it was never meant to be defiant, changed everything. People can't stop watching you because you represent a possibility they told themselves was fake. You show them every single day that the narrative they've been living inside is optional, that the limits they accepted were artificial, that the life they settled for was just one version, not the only version. And that realization is both inspiring and painful. They want what you have, the freedom to be yourself, the courage to walk your own path. But they also resent it because it reminds them of everything they chose not to do. Your existence without the box is a threat to everyone still living inside one. Not because you're attacking their choices, but because you're proof that the box was never necessary. Your freedom makes their compliance visible. Your authenticity makes their performance obvious. Your refusal to play along exposes every compromise they made to stay safe. And that exposure is hard to swallow. This is why people analyze you. They study your choices, your words, your moves, looking for something they can use, either to bring you down or to finally find the courage to walk out themselves. They want to understand how you broke free. They want to know if the freedom you found is real or just another illusion. They want to know if they can do it too. And the fact that you seem so unbothered, so at peace, so clearly unafraid, it both attracts and terrifies them. You don't belong to anyone's narrative, not your family's, not your community's, not the story society wrote for people like you. And that independence is a mark that everyone can read, whether they want to admit it or not. Number 5. You operate from clarity instead of confusion, and that confuses everyone else. Most people are lost, not in a dramatic, crisis-inducing way, but in a quiet, constant background hum of uncertainty. They don't know who they are. They don't know what they want. They don't know what they stand for. They're moving through life on autopilot, following paths someone else paved, making decisions based on fear and approval instead of internal direction. It's exhausting to watch from the outside, but it's even more exhausting to live. And most people have been living like that for so long that they forgot it could be any other way. Then there's you. Someone who seems to know where they're going without needing to announce it. Someone who makes decisions that make sense, not because they're always right, but because they're always aligned. Someone who operates from a place of internal clarity that most people can't even imagine accessing. You're not guessing. You're not hoping. You're not performing. You're simply moving from a place of knowing who you are and what matters to you. And that kind of grounded certainty is rare. So rare, in fact, that most people don't know what to do when they encounter it. When someone operates from confusion, clarity is uncomfortable. It exposes the gap between where they are and where they could be. It highlights every moment they chose to ignore their own instincts. It reminds them of the peace they could have if they stopped abandoning themselves every time the world pushed back. You don't have to teach anyone anything. You don't have to explain your choices. Your clarity speaks for itself, and that speaking is a disruption. People watch you because they're trying to figure out how you got there, how you found that internal compass that seems to always point true north. They want to understand it, replicate it, or at least feel like they could. But the answer is simple. And simple is hard for people who overcomplicate everything to feel safe. You got clear by choosing yourself, by trusting yourself, by refusing to abandon your own knowing just because the world disagreed with it. That's the secret. And it's available to anyone willing to do the work. But most people aren't. So they watch, they study, they try to decode what makes you different. When the truth is you just stopped betraying yourself. Your mark is clarity. And in a world of confusion, clarity is impossible to ignore. Number 6. You don't explain yourself, and that makes people obsessed. There's a particular kind of power in not needing to be understood. Most people spend their lives trying to make sense of themselves, to others. They over-explain, they justify. They narrate their own choices like they owe everyone an explanation for existing. It's exhausting for them and exhausting for everyone around them. But you don't do that. You don't feel the need to justify your decisions, defend your path, or make everyone comfortable with who you're becoming. You simply are. And that simple being is one of the most powerful things any human can offer. When you refuse to over-explain, you create a kind of vacuum. People are used to filling in blanks, especially about others. They create narratives, make assumptions, project their own fears and desires onto anyone who gives them the space to do so. And when you don't fill that space with your own explanation, they fill it with their own imagination. Some of them make you larger than life. Some make you a threat. Some make you a mystery they can never solve. But all of them, every single one, become more interested in you because you won't give them the easy answer. Explanations create closure. When someone explains themselves, the listener can file them away, categorize them, and move on. But when someone refuses to explain, they stay open. They stay intriguing. They stay in the mind long after the conversation ended. You become a question that everyone wants to answer, but no one can answer except you. And you don't. Not because you're hiding, but because you know that who you are isn't for anyone else to define. This drives people crazy, not because you owe them something, but because they rely on explanations to feel in control. When they don't have one, they can't predict you. They can't control you. They can't fit you into a box that makes them feel safe. You're free. And freedom, especially freedom from the need to perform, is something most people don't know how to handle. So they watch, they analyze, they create entire stories about who you are and what you're doing. None of it is about you, but all of it keeps you at the center of their attention. Your mark is silence that speaks louder than noise, and that silence is a magnet. Number 7, you attract attention by not seeking it. And that's the rarest thing in the world, let's be honest. Most people who are noticed because they wanted to be. They performed, they chased validation, they did things designed to pull eyes toward them because inside they felt invisible and needed the world to see them. It's human, it's normal, but it's also loud, desperate, and exhausting to be around. When you encounter someone who draws attention without chasing it, someone who commands a room just by walking in, it feels different. It feels rare. That feels like something you don't see every day. That's you. You don't need to be seen. You don't need to be chosen. You don't need the world to validate your existence because you already know who you are. And that knowledge creates a kind of energy that doesn't try. It simply is. People are drawn to that, not because they're trying to figure out how to get what you have, but because your energy reminds them of something they lost, that sense of enough, that sense of already being whole, that sense of not needing the world to confirm your worth. You have it, and they can feel it. When you stop chasing attention, attention chases you. That's not a law of attraction trick. It's a psychological reality. The human nervous system is tuned to notice what isn't trying to be noticed. When someone is performing, our brains categorize them quickly and move on. But when someone is simply being, without agenda, without desperation, without the constant pull for approval, our attention sticks. We want to understand it. We want to be near it. We want to learn from it. Not because we were told to, but because something inside us recognizes it as real. You're not trying to attract anyone. You're not posting for likes or performing for crowds. You're just moving through your life with an energy that says, I don't need this room to confirm me. I already have what I'm looking for. And that energy is so rare that people can't look away. They want to understand how you got there. They want to know if it's real. They want to feel it for themselves. And the fact that you don't need them to understand makes them want to understand even more. Your mark is that you attract without trying. And that paradox is what makes the world unable to look away. Number 8, you grew without permission, and that challenges everything they were taught. There's a lie that most people live inside. The lie that says, you can't start until someone gives you permission. You can't build until someone opens the door. You can't become until someone with more authority says you're ready. It's a lie that's woven into culture, family, education, religion, every system that shapes how humans grow up. And most people believe it. They wait. They ask. They hope. They ask for permission from people who don't even have it to give. And they never start because someone hasn't said yes yet. Then there's you. Someone who looked at the door, saw that it was locked, and found another way in. Someone who didn't wait for someone to say you're ready because they decided to get ready on their own. Someone who grew, evolved, transformed, without a single permission slip from anyone who was supposed to have authority over your path. You became powerful on your own terms. And that independence is a threat to everyone still waiting at the locked door. When people see someone grow without permission, it breaks something inside them. It exposes the lie they've been believing. It shows them that the authority they thought they needed was never actually necessary. That they could have started any time, they just chose not to. That choice is painful to confront. It makes them angry, defensive, dismissive. They want to find a flaw in your journey. They want to believe you had advantages they didn't have. They want to hold on to the excuse that permission was required. But the truth is, you just decided to stop waiting. And that decision is available to anyone willing to make it. Your mark is self-authorization. The ability to birth your own growth without asking anyone's blessing. That's powerful, that's disruptive, and that's what makes people watch you with a mixture of admiration, resentment, and desperate curiosity. They want to know how you did it. They want to know if it's real. They want to know if they can do it too, and the answer is always the same, yes. But you have to stop waiting for permission to begin. Number 9. You make people feel their own potential. And that's uncomfortable. There's something about being in the presence of someone who is living their potential that forces everyone else to feel the gap between where they are and where they could be. It's not pleasant. It's not easy. It's actually quite painful, because most people have spent years convincing themselves that their potential is either too big to pursue or already lost. They've made peace with small living. They've told themselves the dreams they abandoned were unrealistic anyway. They've settled into a version of themselves that's manageable, safe, and easy to maintain. Then they meet you. Someone who didn't settle. Someone who didn't abandon the dream. Someone who kept growing even when it was hard, even when no one was watching, even when the path made no sense, and suddenly their peace feels like cowardice. Their safety feels like surrender. Their manageable life feels like a slow death they agreed to. Your presence, just your presence, becomes a mirror. Not because you held it up, not because you said anything, but because the contrast is undeniable. Most people can't handle that mirror. They want to look away. They want to dismiss you. They want to find a reason why your success doesn't count, luck, privilege, circumstance. But none of that works, because what you have isn't just visible success. It's visible alignment. It's clear evidence that a human being can grow into themselves without asking anyone's permission. And that evidence is a threat to every story people told themselves about why they had to stop. Your mark is the reflection of possibility. And in that reflection, people see everything they chose not to become. That's not your fault, that's not your responsibility, but it is the reason they can't stop watching you. You're proof that the life they settled for was never required, and that proof hurts, even as it inspires. Number 10. You don't compete with anyone, and that makes you impossible to beat. Here's the thing about competition. Most people need it. They need to win against someone else to feel good about themselves. They need to compare their path to someone else's and come out ahead to feel valid. Competition is the air they breathe. It's how they measure their worth. But you don't compete. You don't measure yourself against anyone. You don't need to win against others to feel like you're winning. You're on your own path, moving at your own pace, building your own version of success. And that makes you not just different, it makes you untouchable. When you don't compete, you remove the one thing that gives others power over you. They can't beat you because you're not playing their game. They're competing against themselves every time they try to keep up with you. They're measuring themselves against you and feeling inadequate because they never even defined what success meant to them in the first place. They just followed the script someone else wrote. But you're not on that script. You're on your own page. And that page isn't even in the same book. People watch you because they want to understand how someone wins without competing, how someone succeeds without making it about anyone else, how someone can be so clearly winning at life while never once acknowledging that winning is the point. The answer is simple. You're not trying to win, you're trying to build. And when your goal is building instead of beating, everyone who is focused on beating everyone else falls behind by comparison. Not because you outperformed them, but because they were never actually building anything. They were just trying to look better than the person next to them. Your mark is non-competition, and in a world that runs on comparison, non-competition is the ultimate advantage. Number 11. You show up consistently when everyone else is showing up sometimes. Consistency is one of the most underrated forms of power. Anyone can show up once. Anyone can have a moment of brilliance. Anyone can perform when the lights are on and the crowd is watching. But showing up day after day when no one is watching, when nothing is changing, when the progress feels invisible, that's where most people fail. That's where the gap opens between who you say you are and who you actually are. And you show up, every time. Without drama, without announcement, without needing the world to pat you on the back for doing the work that matters. Most people can't handle that kind of quiet commitment. They need visible progress or they lose motivation. They need external validation or they stop trying. They need the world to notice their effort or they feel like it's not worth it. But you don't need any of that. You do the work because it's who you are, not because anyone is watching, not because there's a reward coming, just because this is the path you chose and you honor it by showing up every single day, no matter what. This kind of consistency is magnetic. People notice it even when you don't tell them. They see the results even when you don't explain them. They feel the power of showing up without needing applause, and it's something most of them have never experienced. They try to understand how you do it, how you stay committed when everything around you is demanding immediate gratification, how you keep building when nothing seems to be changing. The answer is that you stopped measuring progress by what you could see. You learned to trust the process even when the results weren't visible, and that trust is what keeps you moving when everyone else has already stopped. Your mark is consistency without performance, and it's one of the rarest things on this planet. Number 12. You carry a vision that others can't see yet, and that makes them feel behind. There's a particular kind of loneliness that comes with seeing something that no one else sees yet. You're building something. You're working toward something. You're moving toward a version of reality that exists only in your mind, and no one around you can see it. They think you're wasting time. They think you're chasing fantasy. They think you're unrealistic, naive, distracted by dreams that will never happen. And maybe they're right about some people, but not about you. You see something they can't see. And that gap between your vision and their vision creates a distance that most people find uncomfortable. When people can't see what you're building, they feel behind. Not because they're actually behind, but because your confidence in something invisible exposes their own lack of vision. They look at you and wonder, how do they know? How do they believe? How do they keep moving towards something that doesn't even exist yet? And the answer is that you trust yourself. You trust your knowing. You trust the internal compass that keeps pointing towards something the world hasn't validated yet. That trust is threatening to people who've abandoned their own vision. They used to dream too. They used to see things that no one else saw, but they stopped. They got scared. They convinced themselves the vision was unrealistic. And now they watch you moving towards something they once believed in, and they feel the ghost of their own abandoned future. They don't know if you're right. They don't know if your vision will materialize, but they know that you still believe, and that belief is both inspiring and painful. Your mark is the vision you carry, and in that vision, people see the dreams they gave up. And that's why they can't stop watching, because they're hoping in some quiet place that if they watch long enough, they might start to believe again, too. Number 13. You hold your ground when everyone else bends, and that makes you a reference point. Every room you walk into has people who have bent. They've bent for pressure. They've bent for approval. They've bent for comfort, for safety, for the path of least resistance. They told themselves it was strategic. They told themselves it was necessary. They told themselves everyone does it. And maybe that's true, but you didn't. You held your ground when everyone else folded. You kept your values when everyone else traded them for something easier. You stayed aligned with who you are even when it would have been simpler to compromise. That consistency makes you a reference point, not because you're better, but because you're different. In a world where most people bend, someone who doesn't creates a standard. They become the measure against which everyone else unconsciously measures themselves. People don't talk about it. They don't announce it. But they feel it. They walk into a room with you and suddenly they're aware of every place they bent, every value they traded, every version of themselves they abandoned to fit in. And that awareness is uncomfortable. But it's also magnetic. Because in that discomfort, there's something they want. They want to be someone who doesn't bend. They want to be someone who holds their ground. They want to be someone whose values aren't for sale at any price. And watching you reminds them that it's possible. Even if they're not doing it yet, even if they chose differently, the possibility still exists, and you're proof of it. Your mark is unwavering alignment. And in a world of constant compromise, that alignment is both threatening and sacred. Number 14, you're not done becoming. And that makes you the most interesting thing in the room. Here's what makes you truly magnetic. You're not finished. You're not peaked. You're not the final version of yourself. You're still becoming every day, every choice, every step. You haven't arrived. You haven't figured it all out. You're still moving, still growing, still evolving into something that even you can't fully predict yet. And that unfinished energy is the most powerful thing any human can carry. People are drawn to potential, not to what you are, but to what you're becoming. They want to see what happens next. They want to see how far this goes. They want to witness the unfolding of someone who refuses to stop. And in a world where most people have already peaked, already settled, already decided who they're going to be, your unfinished nature is radically magnetic. You represent what humans could be if they never stopped growing. When people watch you, they're watching possibility. Not a finished product, but a living, moving demonstration of what happens when someone refuses to accept their current version as final. You're proof that evolution is always available, that the story isn't over, that the person you're becoming is more powerful than the person you currently are. And that proof pulls at something deep in everyone who encounters it. Your mark is unfinished becoming. And in a world of people who've stopped growing, unfinished becoming is the rarest, most magnetic energy you can carry. You are being watched. Not because you're better, but because you're different. You carry something that the world has been trained to ignore, and you refuse to ignore it. You carry a mark that most people can't name, but everyone can feel. And that mark is why every eye in every room turns toward you without being asked to. They don't watch you because they want to understand you. They watch you because being near you reminds them of who they could be. Your existence is a disruption, not to attack, not to judge, not to make anyone feel small, but to illuminate, to show them what's possible when someone refuses to stop, when someone refuses to bend, when someone refuses to become what the world expected them to be. You're not here to perform. You're not here to explain. You're not here to make anyone comfortable with their choices. You're here to be who you are, fully, unapologetically, and completely. And that being is enough. That being is the mark. That being is why they watch. The attention isn't a burden, it's confirmation. The world is watching because the world recognizes something it rarely sees. A human being fully aligned with themselves. Keep moving, keep growing, keep being the person who carries the mark without ever explaining it. If this resonated with you, hit subscribe. Like this if you felt something shift. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Drop a comment below. What mark are you carrying that the world hasn't recognized yet? Let's keep this conversation going. Stay awakened, chosen